Oh,
Yeah. Okay, go ahead.
All right. Good morning, Goldwell Banker, George Realty. Good, welcome to our second commercial meeting regarding the environmental risk concerns. This is presented by both John Wax with Snap NHD and also Ami Adini. This is going to go over phase 2 of the environmental services. So without further ado,
That's me. I told you I'm doing 2.
I think I'm going to go ahead.
Okay, I'll jump on when it's my turn.
Hello?
Hello.
Oh, John, we're listening to you.
Yeah,
Anyhow,
sorry.
let me hand it over to John so he can
Okay.
briefly talk, and he can hand it over to Ami after that.
Exactly. Thank you. Good morning, Coldwell Banker George family. I am here for you. Again, just real quick overview. Snap NHD does a commercial report with tax and environmental. We do not actually go to the property and look up or do any testing. All we do is provide information regarding governmental, federal, state, county, and city, local information. And we're here to help you regarding that. My information is in the chat. We are an expert. We own our own data. We have booklets that are on our website in English and Spanish, and in commercial and residential properties. We're here to help you. I am 29 years experience, and with no further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Ami, and he's going to do a great training on phase 2 and phase 3 environmental services. I'm here for you. He's here for you. Take it away, Ami.
John, I'm sorry to interrupt. Are you saying that Mr. Adini doesn't do on-site inspection or do any remediation for that matter?
No, Peter, misunderstood. We NHD providers do not actually.
Oh, you
go out
okay?
to
Okay,
the
property.
Ami goes out to the property, does the inspections, interviews the prior clients, interviews the adjacent property owners, and checks the websites for any signs of environmental contaminations. So I hope that answered the question.
Got it. I'm sorry. That was
No
my
worries.
misunderstanding.
Okay, thank you. And I'm here for you.
all right. Well, thank you very much. And I'm very happy to be here. My voice may get hoarse from time to time, so I have my glass of water here. And so the subject of today is the evaluating environmental risk concerns from the viewpoint of phase 2 and phase 3 environmental site assessments. That's a nice quotation. Lee Iacocca said, "We are continually faced by great opportunities, brilliantly disguised as insoluble problems." And I run into it day in and day out in our phase 1 and phase 2 and phase 3, even site assessments where properties are contaminated and people shy away from them, which and these properties can present great opportunities. So they are disguised as insoluble problems, but they can be solved. My company and I, we have been doing this phase 1, 2, and 3 environmental site assessments since 1988. And a short history, this is, where is it? Oh, this is Arcadia, not far away from here. This is the Embassy Suites Hotel. And the site next to it today is, I believe it's Marriott Suites Hotel. And back in 1988, we already did it. It was a 1-acre, very contaminated site. We handled it at the time at close to $2 million in 1988 money. Again, 1988, we had to go through 92 oil fields of Texaco, USA, because they had to pay a big fine, $11 billion in 1988 money. They had a judgment against them. The city of Anaheim, we did it between 1988 and 1993, all of the civic district of city of Anaheim. We went there 500 properties door to door, and we did the phase 1 and phase 2 and removed tanks. So it's going pretty early. With my company, for about 20 years, we dealt with gasoline stations, and we removed tanks, installed tanks. I think we removed over 2,000 tanks. We installed tanks in over 40 gasoline stations. So when we deal with gasoline stations, we really know them in and out. We just don't know them by the paper. We know what is underground, mostly underground, above ground, how it goes there, how it comes out, what it does, etc. These are some of our tools in trade when we do phase 2, and I'll elaborate on it more. Phase 2 environmental site assessment. On the upper left side, you see a very big drill rig. We go with, sometimes we need to go 200 feet, maybe even 300 feet down into the soil, into the ground, and we use this huge machine. Down at bottom left, you see us exploring here for buried. A second. You see us exploring here for buried tanks. This was a site that had a tank there since 1940. We went there in 2017, and the owners that purchased it in 1970 did not even know they had a tank there. And this is a whole story all by itself. But part of our phase 2 and phase 3, we explore for buried objects. Here down in the middle, you see us drilling inside an industrial facility, going down to groundwater because we were concerned about it at 40 feet below grade. Bottom right, you see we even take samples by hand. This is my associate. This is a site that is contaminated with pesticides. For about 12 years, we had a fleet of machines where we were extracting gasoline, gasoline from soil and gasoline from groundwater. And we went all over properties and we pulled out tens of thousands of gallons of gasoline that was floating on groundwater. So that's, again, I'm showing you those pictures just to tell you that when we look into a property, we understand it all the way from, I say, bare land to the point where you need to put out tens of thousands of gallons of gasoline. For myself, I graduated in 1964 with a degree in mechanical engineering with additional credit in nuclear and chemical engineering, and moved to California, became a general engineering contractor, specializing since 1989, specializing in the removal of hazardous substance. This is a very specialized specialty, I should say. Since 1989, we have dealt with numberless contaminated sites. So there again, it plays into the knowledge when we evaluate the site for contamination. We don't see it just as we see it, maybe it has contamination. We see it all the way to the point, if we need to excavate it, what will it cost? What will it cost to remediate it, to clean it up? And many times, I invite you and others to bring me reports. You go into a property and you see, and you get reports of the past from other consultants that did some work, and you need to understand what it is, or maybe you get reports of phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3, and you want to understand the risk, what will it cost maybe to clean it up. We can help you a lot with that and give you a free advice. It's always, advice is free. We look into the report and we evaluate them for you. On the way to the phase 2 and phase 3, we do a phase 1, and I touched on it at length in our previous meeting. I will only mention it briefly here to put the basis for the discussion of the phase 2 and phase 3. And the purpose of the phase 1, we do it by an ASTM standard, and again, I explained it at length last time. But the basic purpose, the core principle here, the concept is that we look for concerns. Phase 1 does not tell you if there is contamination, what will it cost to clean it up, how wide it is, how deep it is. This is not phase 1. The purpose of phase 1 is basically to make you worried about, okay, if there is something to worry about. So we either tell you, everything is okay, we don't see anything, this place has been vacant land since Adam and Eve, you don't have to worry about it. Or we may say, come to you, this place has been industrial, another extreme, for the last 50 years, and we see lots of reasons to be worried about, to be concerned about contamination. So this is the single most purpose of the phase one, basically to make you concerned or peaceful, I should say. Here is an example. This is back over here in the Mojave Desert, and it is a property here in the middle of the desert, and our client wants to purchase about 80 acres, and they invite us to do a phase one. So here is the property, is 80 acres, and we go there to do a phase one, and we inspect the property, and lo and behold, we see piles strewn over the property of illegal dumping. So when we see this in the process of phase one, we see illegal dumping, we right away raise a red flag, because we don't know what they imported in the site. It could be a benign construction debris, but it could be, and it had been in some instances, highly toxic materials. So we flag it right away in the process of the phase one. In this specific property, we flagged, I went through it, inspected all these 80 acres, and you see all these little clouds here, they designate illegal dumping. So we gave the report to the client and said, dear client, we did the phase one, everything looks good except for those little dumps here. What you would like us to do? Would you like us to check about it? And they said, yes, go ahead and test them. So I will touch upon it in a moment. A few minutes later, I'll tell you how we tested them. But this is an example of a phase one that raises concerns. Here is a similar project in Jurupa Valley. Our client wants to sell this vacant land, and everything looks good. But again, we go there, everything around looks good, the history looks good, everything is great, except again, we go there and we see all these mounds of illegal dumping. The place has been vacant for many years. Unscrupulous people used it to go there and dump all kind of trash, and we don't know what it is, and we tell them, look, everything is great, but we are concerned about these dumps. Would you like us to take samples? And they say, yes, we want you, and I'll show you later on what we did. So here is another property. We did the phase one. It's still on the market for sale. If anybody is interested in it, I can get you there and have you meet with the principals. It's in Inglewood, and we were to do a phase one here. And as we did our inspection in the phase one, look what we have seen there. The owner passed away, and the property went into a state, and they nominated an executioner. And there is a little bit of a sad story, and I'll touch upon it later with the executioner. But as we moved in to do the inspection, we see all these machinery here of metal cutting shop, okay, and machining, and lots of smell of toxic chemicals and oil all around it. Look here, bottom left here, those drums are filled with toxic chemicals. One of them has even hydrogen cyanide, which is very, very toxic, all right? And it's just there, disorderly here in the middle, bottom middle here. What you see here are basically connections to underground tanks that nobody knew about them, all right? So this is part of our phase one. We go there, we see those underground tanks, we see those machines, we see all these chemicals around, and we right away, we raise several flags, and we say, we need to do a phase two. And this is a diagram, and I'll go back to it in a few minutes later, how we did the phase two here, but the stars represent the points where we took the samples for the phase two. Here is another property. Our client owns this big thing here. This is a refinery in Paramount, and they want to expand their operation, and they want to purchase this property here, the trapezoid, and we do a phase one on it, and everything looks good, except there's a little except here, and here is a property Very nice property. It was redeveloped, this beautiful building, and they sell a vintage car over there, and Mustang vintage cars, gorgeous. And building is great, and this is the building. And when we do the phase one, we go, part of the phase one is to check historical aerial photographs. So here is an aerial from 1970, and what is now this building used to be, we see this operation here, all right? And we check into the historical records, into old city directories, old building permits, and we find that there was an auto mechanic here, and they were building mufflers. They were replacing mufflers for hot rods, you know, and those mufflers that make big noise, you know, when people are driving the car. And so they were making those mufflers, and in the process of making the mufflers, they were coating them with, plating them with chromium. And chromium, in the process of plating, is a very toxic material. So we say, okay. So in the 1970s, there was a plating shop here, and they were plating with chromium. So that raises a red flag, because in addition to that, what we find is that back there, they had a septic system. We see it from a city, from old building permits. We see that there used to be a septic system. What is a septic system? Here you have a bathroom, the toilet, and sinks, and the pipe goes to a tank, and the solid material sinks, goes down, settles down in the tank, and over time it rots away. And with bacteria, the fluid goes from here to the pipe to a drain field, and it drains into the soil. So when we see a septic tank, historic septic tank, in a place that used to do chrome plating, we get pretty concerned, because people sometimes, they used to dump chemicals and solvents into the sinks. And once those chemical and solvents, they go to wash their hands, they use some rugs, and they squeeze the rugs, you know, into the sink, and the rug is full of toxic material. And right away it goes to the septic tank, and from there it goes into the surrounding. Another system in the old days was what we call seepage pit. They did not have the tank, but you see on the right side, you have the toilet place, and it goes directly to a seepage pit. And on the left, you see the seepage pit is built of bricks. And the idea there is for the solids of the sewage, the solids are settling down and rotting over time. And little by little, over years, it gets filled up. And maybe once in 10 or 20 years, you call a vacuum truck and you pull it out. But the liquids, the fluids, are going out to the environment. So if they dump any toxic materials there, it goes to the environment. So anytime we see a septic tank or a septic system or a seepage pit in a historic industrial plant, it raises a flag right away in the phase one, and the result is usually a phase two right after that. Here is another example. This is in East Los Angeles. This is Whittier Boulevard. And we do a phase one on this property, and we don't find anything wrong with the property. Everything is hunky-dory. They've been doing glass over there for ages. Everything is great. But part of the phase one is we need to check on the surrounding properties to see if there is any way that the surrounding properties may impact the property in question, all right? So what we see here, we see across the street, not far away, we see printers and cleaners used to be there. And the distance is only maybe 160 feet. And we are concerned because we have seen cleaners and printers used to use highly toxic solvents. And they are known to having contaminated their soil. And those solvents are volatile, and they travel in the ground as vapors. And I've seen cases where these solvents traveled over 300 feet away from the point of origin. So when we see a property nearby, just across the street, it raises a flag And right away we say, okay, we have a concern here. We don't say, look, do a phase 2. We leave it open. We put in our conclusion, we have a concern, but once we raise the flags, the conventional lender and the SBA lenders, right away, they will demand a phase 2. Here is another example. This is in Paris, about a year or so ago. Our client is interested in this vacant land. This, again, has been a vacant land since Adam and Eve, okay? Always have been a vacant land. So we are not concerned about the land per se, but when we look around here, we see all these storage of potentially toxic materials. Here I am. Here is a close-up picture. This is on the right side. This is a property that I'm doing the phase 1 on, and I'm standing there and I'm sending my hand over the fence, and you don't see me because I take my camera and I hand it over the fence to this way, and I take pictures. Okay, so I take a picture of those drums, and they are in a very bad condition, and I'm concerned. I raise a concern that those drums may have leaked, and if they leak, the contamination may travel as toxic vapor into my property that I'm investigating. So again, the property itself is okay, but we are concerned about migration, and this is a big word in our world of phase 1 is migration. Toxic materials can migrate into a property from a nearby site, and we raise a flag. And once we raise this flag, it usually leads to a phase 2. Here is another example. This is in, where is it? Port Hueneme. Port Hueneme, and this is our property. Nothing wrong with the property. Has always been a dentist. There is a dental office here, and he's selling it to a guy that wants to put animal hospital here. They have several animal hospitals around, and they are veterinarians, and they put, so nothing wrong with the property. But look on those red arrows. There used to be a dry cleaners here in this corner. There used to be a dry cleaners here, and there used to be something else, maybe a machine shop or dry cleaner over here. And the distances are pretty short from my property. And I know, and so we raise a flag. We say, look, dear client, nothing wrong with the property. We have concerns about these properties, and it's up to you. We always leave it up to the client, to the one who orders the phase 1, to decide if they want to do a phase 2. We never say you have to do a phase 2. We say it's up to you. Do you want to further explore these concerns? And if we raise this kind of concerns, when our reports go to conventional lenders or SBA lenders, they immediately say, they will say phase 2. They will mandate the loan on a phase 2.
Pardon. So you're saying that even though the property that you're talking about, it was a dental office,
Yes,
they have to do, the bank were required to have phase 2 because the closes other properties?
because of my report. I am the culprit here. I'm the
Okay.
devil, okay? Because when I put in my report that I, as an environmental professional, say that there is a potential for contamination to migrate into this property
You mean air?
as a vapor, under not in the atmospheric air, in the subsurface air, in the ground.
It could be a solvent, it could be gasoline, it could be some sort of chemical.
Right.
That 3 sites could be some sort of, it could be a garage, it could be a dry cleaning. You
Right.
have different chemical that go underneath the ground. And the gentleman's talking about that their concern is about migrate. And this liquid can migrate, turn to vapor, and the damage
Okay.
the property.
And in that case,
And
what?
he reports that on the
Okay,
report.
I got it. In that case, this specific case, you report the new buyer, which is
Yeah.
gonna be something else, not identical claim, right?
The new buyer wants to put animal hospital there.
Animal hospital.
Yes,
And what did he decide to do?
to do a phase 2.
He went to phase two.
He went for phase 2 right away, yes.
And then what happened?
We did not find any problem.
Oh,
Now, the question is, the buyer has the option to either do it or not. But that's if the cash buyer. Like, if I have a loan, then the bank would have the one that have to say whether or not they want to do it or not.
Very true,
Right.
very true. I have had cases of cash buyers. I had a case, my client bought a property contaminated from dry cleaners next door. I'm sorry, they used to be a dry cleaners there. They contaminated the big way. He bought it as is at the cash and redeveloped it. We took away all the floors. We put some barriers there under the floor so the gas toxic will not enter into the building. We put barriers, we put the whole system there, and he put a new floor. We put 13 ghost kitchens there right now, and he's happy.
okay, but on that case that you're talking about the cleaners, was it a plant in that one single property? Or
Yes, it was in the It was in
shopping center?
the property. There was a plant. It
So
was
what about the cleaners is actually on a shopping center?
well, if there is a cleaners on a shopping center and you buy a unit next to it, you
Be
may.
concerned.
You should be concerned. I'm not saying should, I'm really careful, but I'm leaving it up to you to worry, okay? But I'm telling you, look,
Well, I'm
the-
going to that.
yeah, but
process right now, I'm gonna have somebody who's going to sell their cleaners, but it's not on a single building.
yeah,
It's on a
it has to
shopping-
be how far it is from that, okay? I've seen cases on those shopping strips or shopping plazas.
Right.
The cleaner is several units away.
Right.
And the gas under the soil under this unit is contaminated with toxic vapors. All right, so if you have somebody that wants to buy it, he may be buying a property with a liability on it. All right, and again, it is up to them if they want to be concerned or not. Okay, because I can tell you, once we do a report, if we do a phase 1 on it, it goes to a lender, and we raise a concern. Most lenders will not land on the property. So the guy can say, "Well, I'm a cash buyer. I'm buying it. I don't care." And we have those cases. Okay.
Right.
All right. This was a very good question. I like those questions. A very good question. Here is another case, and this is in Thousand Oaks. All right. Our client is interested in buying this car dealership here, and very nice car dealership and auto mechanics there, everything there. And there is this furniture store here in present time. But when you look into the history, there used to be dry cleaners here that were burned down and they contaminated a lot. And we have a good idea that the dry cleaners migrated into this property. So either way, we tell them, okay, right now it's a furniture store, no problem. But 20 years ago, there was a dry cleaner here. They had a fire, everything burned down. The thing leaked down. They did a cleanup there, but at the time when they cleaned it up, they only cleaned up the soil. Nobody tested the vapor. So I'm telling them, you may want to test the vapor, and we raise a concern here. And they say, well, but so far, I think they haven't yet purchased the property. I don't know what is happening there. So here is a diagram just to touch back on what we spoke a moment ago. You have here on the left, you have a contaminated landfill. And you have chemicals leaking into the ground, and this is the brown stuff. This is contaminated soil, all right? Our property of interest is here, is this building on the right, all right? They are not sitting on the contamination. However, in this specific example, the contamination goes down to groundwater. Groundwater move under this building, and the contamination evaporates from groundwater into the building, all right? So this is a case where groundwater is shallow. But we also have cases where the vapors travel directly horizontally from the soil. They don't need to get to groundwater. They go this way and arrive at the building. So this is migration, which are very concerned about. Here is a case in Crescent City, close to Oregon border. My client owns this property, the rectangle here. And they called us to do a phase 1 on it. And I look at it real quick and I say, we don't even need a phase 1. I can tell you right away you are contaminated because I look into the history here, and this is a lumber country. This is redwood country. There used to be a lot of lumber industry here, and in the lumber industry, they use toxic chemicals to treat the lumber. And this groundwater here, you can see the water here is very shallow, about 5 feet, and he's sitting on groundwater. And I'm telling him, look, without looking any further, I can tell you your property is contaminated by migration from this property here. So he elected not even to do a phase 2. He owns the property, he already bought it as it. He doesn't want to know more about it. He bought it many years ago as is. Right now, I'm telling him, look, in all practicality, you are contaminated. I say to him, I don't need even to do a phase 2. I can tell you, you are contaminated, all right? So he decides not to redevelop. He thought he would redevelop it. He is not going to redevelop. I'm sorry, no, correction. He wanted to sell it. And I told him, it's very hard for you to sell it unless you do a comprehensive phase 2, and it will cost a lot of money to do the phase 2,
Right.
and maybe phase 3. And do you want to invest this money? And he says, no, I don't want to. I'm not selling this property. He stayed there. I visited it a few weeks ago. I traveled in the area. He rented the whole place out, and he built some buildings there. He rented them out. He's not, and he hasn't sold it ever since. He put a big antenna here for those telephone companies, you know, and he's not selling it. Yeah.
I have a question, since you know, and you know, the land's contaminated, he can't sell, right?
Yes.
If you want to sell it, the new buyer might want him to clean it up. It costs a lot, so he said.
A lot.
He decided not to. Now, the question is, he's building something on it,
Yes.
with the intention of renting it out. But
Right.
he knows the property is contaminated.
Right.
Do you
But
have any, I mean, is any legal issue with that?
no, not legal issues, because Crescent City, and I've not gone deep into it, but Crescent City here, this is a big market. This is, I think this is a Costco or Walmart. I think it's maybe Walmart, big market, okay? They are building their own contamination. They are not concerned, okay?
They're not
Because
concerned.
they are not concerned because it is the water that is contaminated. There is no toxic vapor in the ground, okay? So, and the government is not asking them to clean it up, because basically the government now owns all this place. The people that owned these lumber yards here or lumber factories has long since gone bankrupt, okay?
Right.
They left it to the government, okay? So the government owns this land, so they are now the owner of the contamination, and they don't do much about it. So they are not going to fault this guy here. These guys are not going to fault them and tell them clean it up, because he's not the contaminator. He's not the culprit, okay? So they cannot go against him to clean it up, except, you're right, if he wants to redevelop it and the city says, hey, you are contaminated, you're going to put building on a contaminated soil, and we are concerned about the safety or health of the people that will occupy it. This is a real concern, okay?
So that's my concern is this, he knows he can sell it, and if you want to sell, you gotta clean it up. Now, he himself building a building, can he sell it now?
Well,
Yeah.
it's up to the buyer, it's between the buyer and the seller, you know?
And the buyer will probably say that I need a.
The buyer may say, I take it, because the buyer knows that nobody will make them clean up the contamination.
It's really
Okay.
up to the buyer.
So it's up to the buyer. I mean, if the buyer is concerned, but there will be, this is very good points, and you guys are very smart.
And now
because-
you want
yeah.
to go around, you know what I'm saying? Before, when the vacant land is contaminated, and you really can't sell to the seller until you clean it up. Now you're selling, you're building a place,
Right.
and then you want to sell it.
He cannot sell it because, I would say, because of the bad reputation, because of the stigma, okay? So it's hard to sell it. Banks will not lend money on it right now, okay?
Yeah,
You know, regular banks will not lend money, okay? So that's a problem, all right?
yeah, because.
You see, so he's staying there, you know?
But eventually, he's gonna die.
You're gonna sell, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe eventually we'll find a good buyer. They'll say, I don't care about the contamination, and I'll buy it as is. Like he bought it as is. He bought it as is. He's making money, he's making rental income.
On this specific picture, do you say it's Crescent City?
Yes,
Okay, all that area, it's commercial.
Yes.
What about the surroundings? Anything around there that is?
I've not gone farther than that. There are residentials there, but they are farther away.
Far away?
I don't, well, seems to me, this
Like
may be,
next door.
this may be residential. Here's, this is up the hill, on the hill.
Right.
There is a hill there. If there is a hill, there is no
My
concern.
question to you is like, if you're selling, let's say, a property or a whole complex next door, let's say they're not, aren't you supposed to, the developer supposed to be doing the phase one to the land before they do that?
Any commercial property nowadays, conventional lenders will require phase one on any commercial property.
Right, but this is not commercial, I'm talking about residential.
Residential,
I'm talking about next door,
yeah, next door, let's say maybe those may be residences here.
because you say right now that water is contaminated. So they have to be.
Absolutely, yeah,
They're
there is
gonna
a
get the water somewhere.
there is a possibility in this particular case, there is a possibility that phase one will be required because they are close. I mean, I had the case of a whole community that was built next to a landfill. I thought somewhere in the where is it? Next to Corona, in those areas of Corona,
Right,
built close to a landfill. I forget the name, and people started getting sick there.
yeah,
and
because of the gases.
they came to me to investigate, and I went to some lawyers to see, but I don't know what was the end of it. But the whole community was built next to this landfill, and nobody checked on it. So you're right,
I'm concerned about that because you just said right now, because Montebello has that landfill right there, and there's a lot of communities around it. It's not on top of it, but it's around it.
so they may have checked on it. Look, city of Rialto. Rialto retained me at one time to inspect an 11-acre site that was across from a huge landfill, all right? And they wanted to give it to developers to redevelop. It's over there, it's all commercial, industrial next to this. And so I checked those 11 acres because we were concerned about toxic gases coming from the landfill.
Right,
And we tested, everything came clean. So they were smart enough, the redevelopment agency of Rialto, to retain us to do this prior investigation.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So you already asked good questions, so so we'll continue. Oh yeah, what's his name? The General George Patton says, take calculated risks. He says that is quite different from being rash. All right. So he was at the time he was blamed for being rash, and he said, "I'm not rash. I'm taking calculated risks." He was a very famous general of World War II, and Mario Andretti, he's a race car driver. He's saying, if things seem under control, you're just not going fast enough. Okay, so so we have to strike a certain balance between being safe and between moving forward. All right. Because sometimes you don't move forward fast enough, you lose a transaction, right?
right.
So, so there is a certain balance here. So the phase two, let us go in more depth into the phase two. The purpose of the phase two, this is a yes or no proposition, okay? Because, and you need to understand it because many of my clients don't understand what a phase two is. The phase one raises concerns. We say, okay, we are concerned. We don't know if it is contaminated. We are concerned about it. Phase two is just to tell us if it is contaminated or not, all right? It does not tell us the magnitude of the contamination. It is not intended for that. And many times it happens to me that I do a phase two and I say to them, it is contaminated. And they say, how much will it cost me to clean it up? And I said to them, wait a minute, it's like you going to the doctor, you check your temperature, it says you are hot, and you say, do I have cancer, all right? So this is just a yes or no. Are we, or are we not contaminated? We need to understand that, very important. So here is back to this Yermo place, and in the desert, in Mojave, and not Mojave, in the, sorry, in the Joshua Tree Forest, and this area, Mojave Desert, and so in Mojave Desert, right? So we saw those dump area, and we raised this flag on them. We said, well, we are concerned they may be contaminated, and so we went there to take the samples. This is how we take. It's very simple, very crude way. This is how we take the soil sample. When we sample at the surface, we just take shovel, spade, we put it in a plastic bag, and then we send those battery of plastic bags to the lab, and then the lab is giving us the results. And in this case, we have the results. Here are the piles. We tell them, here we are, the bottom pile here. We tell them, look, you have lead and you have arsenic here. This pile is clean. This pile, again, has lead and arsenic. This pile has only arsenic in it. So we tell them that is the situation. And they say, and not only that, we give them a little more than that. We give them diagrams and we tell them, okay, this pile is 16,000 square feet.
Wow.
Yeah, this pile is 6,000 square feet, etc. This one is 7,000 square feet, etc. This one is 2,000 square feet right away. And we tell them it's not going deep, this is a surface. And right away, we can tell them how much it will cost to clean it up.
Yeah, that's it.
And that's what it is. They send the truck there, they send the bulldozer, take it out, property is clean, no problem. This is the easy stuff. In this case, this is the Inglewood property. This is more complicated. And so again, you see all this machinery that we were concerned about it, and the underground tanks here. And and this is a diagram. We told them we need to sample in all of these areas, and we sampled there. And you see, here is how we take soil vapor samples. You see here we are drilling. This is a 1-inch drill going through the concrete. It's a 1-inch hole, not a big hole, going through the concrete, down under the concrete. And then we stick, this is our probe. This is a hollow tube. It goes down deep as we want. We can go down. In this case, we just go under the slab, but sometimes we go 5 feet, sometimes we go 10 feet. It depends on the situation. And this probe is hollow, and at the end there is a tip. And this is a tubing, and it goes to a vacuum pump here inside the box. And the vacuum pump sucks out the air. At a certain point, we take the sample, and this is how we take the samples. You see here, our guy here, this is a syringe. He's sticking the syringe into this plastic tube and is pulling out a sample, like somebody is pulling out a blood sample, okay? Same way. He's pulling out a sample for me. And then here is our lab, and it's in the truck. It's a mobile lab. It's in the van. It's on the side. Here is our technician sitting here. And here is the equipment of the lab. So this is a computer. Here is injecting the sample. This is the analytical instrument. I will not get into details unless you ask me. But this is how they test the sample, and within 30 minutes, we know the results right there. We know the results. So by the end of the day, when we test, we have the results. It takes me a few days to write the report, but we can tell you right away what is the situation there. So back to this property, this is what we did, and then we gave them a chart here. We showed them all these are numbers. We tell them, look, guys, you are contaminated, and these numbers are low. These are big numbers, all right? You are contaminated, and this is a phase 2, and you need to do a phase 3. Phase 3 is right now we told them you are contaminated in a big way, and but we don't know how deep it goes. We don't know if it reaches groundwater. And this is up to you if you want to do a phase 2 and say how much is a phase 3. And I believe I told about $40,000 to $50,000.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but this is phase 3. Okay, it's not any cleanup, but you need to understand because you also have additionally you have tanks that you need to remove. I told them the tanks to remove is probably another $20,000. All right. The property as clean. Can sell for at least $1.5 million. So then the state needs to decide, and the executor, not executioner, the executor, he wants to go forward. But there are, how to say, beneficiaries, 11 beneficiaries, and it is hard. The executor has to deal with beneficiaries. very hard. They haven't done anything. And the sad story is the executor just passed away 2 months ago. He had what they call congenital heart failure, what they call.
Okay.
But I suspect that he also died away because he stayed in this place too long. And I'll tell you,
Yeah.
I'll tell you in a moment why.
Was that a mechanical,
A mechanic shop. I mean, he was just the executor. He was not the owner that passed away. Because when I walked after I did this, my phase 2 there, I walked there one day for another reason, and I remember why. My daughter sent me there because they had a lot of vintage. And my daughter collects vintage, so they had a lot of vintage. I went there to collect vintage, and I was there for 15 minutes, and I felt nauseated and I felt sick inside the building. And I walked right away. I walked to the executor. He made himself an office there, and he's already a sick man with a heart problem. I told him, look, you stay there, you put a mask. I told him, because no, what happened? I was there. I was not sick when I was there. I went out from there. I started driving. 15 minutes after that, I felt nauseated. I felt sick in my car. So I turned back, I walked there, and I said, I smelled it over there. I smelled the smell, but I was not nauseated. I got nauseated 15 minutes after I left. I went back there and I said, if you stay here, you put a half a face mask, not just those COVID masks, filters, if you stay there, okay? And and then I thought, we better test the air.
wait, so you're telling me all the employees, they were not wearing OSHA?
They were not employees, the place is shut down.
Oh,
The place is shut down, the place is vacated, okay? Vacated, but it was him, the executor, made himself an office, plus one worker there.
Okay.
And I told him, you have to be careful here. And I recommend that we test the air, okay? So he agreed. And we went, you see here, this is a sampler. I'll show you a close-up in a moment. This is one of our samplers.
Question.
Sure.
In a property like this, or like commercial property like this, isn't OSHA required to be there all the time, most of the time, sometimes?
Well, OSHA is required to be where you have employees. Okay, if you are the owner and you want to get sick, not you. If the owner is there and the owner wants to get sick, that's their private business, personal business, okay? OSHA is There's no part in it. But now the employee there, it was tricky. The employee was kind of half legal. All right. So you just stayed quiet. But I warned him. I said, okay, so these are our samplers there. You see, those are 6-liter canisters, and where we put them under vacuum, then we open them for 8 hours. They suck in the air for 8 hours.
Oh,
Then this is like an OSHA test.
right.
They are regulated to suck in the air for a total of 8 hours. And after 8 hours, we shut it off, we take it to the lab, and the lab gives us a result. And here are more samplers here. Here is a sampler here. And an interesting part here, I have this is a yellow thing. This is a hand, this is very rough. It's not accurate.
Right.
Just to give you an order of magnitude. And this is one of the connections to the tank, to the buried tanks. And I put my sampler here and it goes off the scale right away. Okay, so I know that this is one of the sources of the vapors there right away. But we send it to and there comes the results of all the test apparatus. And we have 6, all the yellow results are contaminated. And the air is contaminated above the toxic levels that are permitted, all right? So I give them back and I say, look, there's a situation. Well, he stayed there and he passed away a month ago. But he passed away from congenital heart failure. But you are already sick, you are already weak. What are you doing sitting there and getting bloated? I saw him before he was getting there. He was not bloated. He was sitting there, he was getting bloated, he was getting sick, getting all the bad things. So it's like in this COVID thing, you know, you go, a guy already have a problem, now he gets the COVID, he's gone, all right? Anyway, so this was a sad case, yeah.
Chloride, benzene. And that's the thing?
Yeah, oh, you can, yeah,
That's
methyl
what
and
it's
these are all carcinogens.
Yeah.
These are all carcinogens, all right, and they're all in the air, all right? So these things are real, okay? Here's another property. This is in Santa Ana. My client is a family of car auto bodies, and they want to buy this property. This has been a car mechanic since the early 1980s, and before that, he had another history. There was an industrial laundry here before that. So we're getting concerned. We say, well, you need to do a phase 2, but also we know that there used to be tanks here in some area, and we have no documents about these tanks being removed. So we need to check for that. There were tanks here that we have documents that they were removed, but there were a couple of tanks here that we don't know what happened to them. So we say, okay, we need to do a phase 2 for several reasons. One is all those industrial laundry here in the past, auto mechanic, gas station. We need to do a phase 2. And also we don't know, you may still have tanks there. So the first thing that we do is we move here to explore with those instruments to find the tanks, if there are tanks. And here's another instrument, and we have to explore for, we're there to find the tanks, all right? So you see here all those markings, here that the markings. We did not find the tanks. This was the good news, but we found all kinds of suspect things under the surface, but we were not concerned about them from the viewpoint of contamination. Just there is something there under the ground. And here is the map that they gave us, the explorers, all those, here you see those rectangles here, rectangles here. There is something in the ground, but it's not tanks, all right? So we knew we did not have tanks, so this was good, all right? And then we went to continue to do our phase 2, and, I'm sorry. And yeah, we continue to do our phase 2. And like before, all these yellow stars are where we took the samples. And I'm showing you only some of the results, not all of the results. This building has some contamination under it, but the degree, the amount of contamination is not of a concern.
Yeah.
So we know there is a concern contamination, we say no concern. We give them, you say, a clean bill of health. Okay, we are not concerned. Here is another contamination of benzene. Benzene does travel, that we see it as a vapor in the ground, and there is like a cloud of it here within those 2 lines. There is a cloud traversing the property from the north to the south of this, okay, from up, down, but all the levels are very small, very low. So we are not concerned about that. We also know that it's not coming from him because of the pattern here. We know it's coming from there, it's going through the property and moving away, but we are not concerned about it. And we give them a good report, and I know that by now they purchased the property. So you already asked the questions. Now, phase 3. Phase 3 is the concept of the phase 3 is basically a continuation of the phase 2. Phase 2 said it is or it is not contaminated. Phase 3, we want to know more about it. For example, our client owns this plaza here. There was a phase 1 done not by us. There was a phase 2 done not by us. And I'm sorry, there was not a phase 2. There was a phase 1 done here. And they found that groundwater is contaminated because there are regulatory reports that say that there is a dry cleaner here that contaminated, and the contamination traveled under the street and contaminated him. And he's there, he wants to refinance for $5 million, and the bank is not lending him money because they say groundwater under you is contaminated. And he says, yeah, but this is from the dry cleaner. And the bank says, well, how do we know that you did not contribute to it? And not only that, regulatory agencies or the government is already involved in the investigation of these guys here, okay? And they say to him, you are contaminated. And the government is telling him, we want to know that you are not part of the problem here. So he cannot get to refinance. He needs to refinance $5 million. He cannot get it. So they retain us after $250,000, cost him $250,000 that we had to investigate it because the government, it's not easy to deal with. And the picture was, we proved beyond a reasonable doubt, these are the dry cleaners, they contaminated. It came down in the groundwater. The street is here, traveled under the street. He had a little bit of contamination. It never reached groundwater. This contamination was insignificant. We gave a very detailed report. He got clean bill of health, he refinanced, but this was $250,000. So phase 3 is not cheap. All right, it's not cheap. That's the idea.
Yeah, he got 5 million.
All right. And this is another example. Again, this is a gasoline station, and it contaminated the whole area. In this case, it's like, it's very bad case, and this is already $2.5 million. They did phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 cleanup. They cannot clean it up. There are thousands of gallons of gasoline floating on the groundwater here, going down into the neighborhood, going down to this property here. My client is sitting here. He's sitting downhill. He's getting all this contamination from them, all right? And his groundwater is contaminated. He cannot clean it up because it's keep coming from him. These guys are defunct, went bankrupt 15 years ago. And this is a bad case. This property cannot be cleaned up. So sometimes we have cases which just cannot do anything. These are some of the tools and trades that we do with our phase 2. This is this machine. So this machine that you see here on the left, this is a push machine. What we do, it pushes tubes into the ground here. This is a diagram of it. It pushes tubes into the ground. Here are the tubes. They go down into the ground. They get filled with soil. We pull out the tubes and we test the soil and we get our samples from it. These machines are limited in power. They can go down maybe 40 feet in the best case. If we need to go deeper, we go for more robust machines. Like this one. This machine, we went down with it already 200 feet. And we use it also to install wells. We need to install groundwater monitoring wells. We use a much bigger machine. The bigger there are, the more expensive the operation is. Here is the schematics of how we take vapor samples from the soil. So on the left here, you see a probe. This is a different kind of probe that I showed you before. There is the tip here, a hollow tip, and it is connected to a nylon tube. And the nylon tube goes here to the blue pump, and the pump sucks the vapor. And here you have the syringe, taking the samples with the syringe. So here again, you see these tubes going into the ground. Here you see the syringe. Here is this nice young lady taking, here is the syringe, taking soil vapor samples. So Herbert Spencer says the great aim of education is not knowledge, but action. And yeah, I know. I had friends in my school of engineering. I had some friends, they studied to be an engineer, then they went for the master, stayed in school, then they went to their doctor, became a PhD, and then they stayed in school and became teachers. They never became engineers, but they already became teachers. Okay, so the great aim of education is not knowledge, but action. We want to.
Too much knowledge.
Too much knowledge, too little action. So this is it. Thank you very much for being such a good audience. And
Okay, question.
yeah,
According to your experience, which one of this contaminant are the worst? Is the gasoline? Is the oil? Or is the dry cleaning? Apparently dry cleaning is.
dry cleaning is the worst.
Is the worst, huh?
Is the worst because it is carcinogen. It is how to say? It stays in the environment for ages. You can have it 100 years later. All right. It does gasoline, because of being petroleum, and it's subject. Bacteria loves gasoline. Bacteria will eat gasoline. Also, over time, it will disappear.
Right.
Benzene, which is carcinogen, doesn't go far away from the source point, and the bacteria eats it away like that. Okay, so after a few years, it's gone. Okay, it's gone. But the dry cleaning solvents, which are perchloroethylene, trichloroethylene, they are what they call recalcitrant. They stay in the environment, and when they break down, they break very slowly. There are some bacteria that eat it away. Okay,
Right.
but it's very slow process. And when they break down, so you have the dry cleaning solvent, which is perchloroethylene. It breaks down and it creates trichloroethylene. It's another chemical which is carcinogen. When trichloroethylene breaks down to another chemical. When this breaks down, it breaks down to vinyl chloride, which is very toxic. So even when the dry cleaning solvent breaks down, it's still becoming more and more toxic. All right. So it's bad news. And as a vapor, it travels. And I've seen it traveling in the worst case I've seen it was about over 300 feet, about 300 feet. Most cases that I've seen, it did not travel far. I could find it maybe another 100 feet away, but the extreme was 300 feet. So I'm pretty careful about it. I have a client, already approached me 5 times in the last 3 years. He wants to buy a strip plaza on Figueroa, downtown LA.
Okay.
And he gives me the report. And I told him there was a dry cleaner there. And he says, yes, but they put something to clean it up. I say, it's worth nothing. It's just nothing. Okay. And, but the prime concern for you, I told him, everybody that investigated there is only investigated inside the property. You have a residence, family living just across the fence from you. You have an apartment building across the fence here. Nobody investigated. God forbid, it traveled under them and it's just across the fence. I mean, you're exposing yourself to big lawsuits, okay?
Okay, that's exactly what my concern. Because you're saying if a person wants to buy or sell on a specific property, the lender requires phase 1, 2, or 3. What about, my concern is this, is something like you say in downtown LA, there is property next to it, which are residential.
Mhm.
So how come the lenders are not requiring to those properties next to it is to have a phase 1?
Well,
lease?
this requires a little bit of more sophisticated, educated lender, okay? Because usually on residentials, there is no requirement for a phase 1, usually. So, so that requires somebody to look into.
Yeah,
it.
because
I know, and then they may get a loan without a phase 1.
correct. No, but the problem is it's not just that. What I'm talking about in the long run, because you're saying that those cars are there for a long time.
Yeah, for a long time.
Many years.
Yes,
So that means people next door are breathing those carcinogens.
they could be breathing them.
So that somebody's gonna get sick, somebody's gonna do a lawsuit to the owner of that property, has nothing to do with it. And they're gonna complain that they have lead in their building.
But they will, if they're ever going to sue somebody, I'm not an attorney,
Right.
but from what I've seen, I've been an expert witness in over 30 cases and dealing with attorneys and I've seen enough to understand that these resident over there, if he gets sick or he finds that he cannot sell his property because of contamination, he will go after the owner of the property next door. Now the owner say, well, I did not do it. I don't care. It's coming from your property. All right. So, so now it's coming now to the legal aspect. Yeah, he did not cause it, but he owns it. He owns the problem.
Back to the same question. So let's say they're next to it, across the street, or even a block away from it. There is this 15, 16, 20 units building that is for rent. It's already a commercial property.
Okay. It is.
But most of the time, the lenders do not require the phase 1 for something like that, or
It's up to the lender. I've seen it. I read the standard operating procedure of SBA. There is a standard operating procedure,
Right.
50.10.6, okay, for SBA lenders. And there is a whole chapter, the chapter E, about environmental. And for them, they have a certain checklist that you need, checklist that you need to check on every commercial property, whether or not to do a phase 1, all right?
Right.
And so you have to check it. I've never studied the checklist, okay? But as far as SBA is concerned, anything that has more than 4 units is commercial, all right?
Right.
So now you need to go through the checklist, and I agree with you. Not every commercial property you do a phase 1 on it. So, but most of them you do, all right? Most of them are done. And go ahead and study the checklist and see which one will require or not. But I can tell you right away that gasoline station, dry cleaner, industrial plants, there is no question about it. They will require phase 2, okay? No question. Shopping strips, based on my experience, they will require phase 2. This apartment building, I don't know, that's a borderline, all right? But, so,
I'm thinking about in the future for people who are doing commercial, not really commercial, half a commercial, when it comes to apartments,
right.
there are more than 5 units or so, especially in downtown, and they don't know what's
Well, I
happening in there.
have a person, an owner of a property, already contacted me 5 times. Poor guy. He did a phase 1 and he has an apartment building, okay? And he did the phase 1, and the other consultant that did the phase 1 told him, look, behind the fence, you have a dry cleaner. So we are raising an issue here. You have a dry cleaner behind the fence. You have all of being residential, but there is a shopping plaza there, okay, shopping strip. And he come to me and he says, what should I do? I told him, you have to do a phase 2, but he doesn't want to. He's afraid to do a phase 2.
It's gonna cost a lot.
But I've seen it. I did a phase 2 on a property in Glendale, prime property. Right now it's used for attorney's office or whatever on the corner. It used to be a dry cleaner. Across the fence, there is a high end in residences.
Yes.
And I tested it, and the cloud is going under them, and they don't even know that.
And my last question, I'm sorry.
Really quick, for the purpose of the training, let's go ahead and stop recording. Just
How do I do that?
go, press the 3 dots right there. And stop recording.